Welcome to the Remodeling Reimagined podcast, the podcast that gives you an inside look at the remodeling world from award-winning designers. On this week's pod, Cindy Cipriani sat down with designers Melissa Firth and Ken Endt to discuss the 4 fundamentals of good kitchen design. Without further ado, here is your host, Cindy Cipriani.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Remodeling Reimagined. I'm here with my cohorts, Ken and Melissa again, and we're going to be talking about trade secrets of a good design. So, if you're going to do a major project, you should really get professional advice. I mean, I know that sounds kind of self-serving, but it will save you a lot of time and money in the long run if you're dealing with someone who is a professional and really knows the details of what they're doing. If you don't, sometimes it doesn't come out the way you wished it would, and you end up redoing it in a few years, and you don't want to do that. So it's a big investment. It's helpful to get someone else's opinion, especially someone who hasn't just done a few kitchens, but who's done very complicated and very easy designs. And so today we're going to be talking about 4 fundamentals of good kitchen design, and they are balance, symmetry, focal points, and scale. So let's start off right off the bat with balance. Now, when something's off balance, you may not know how to explain it, but do you ever walk in a room and it just doesn't feel right? So Melissa, why don't you tell us a little bit about the fundamentals of good kitchen design when it comes to balance?
Well, I think just what you just said. First of all, we don't know what is off balance until you see it. When you walk into a space and you're like, something doesn't feel right. A lot of times people put all their appliances together in one corner. But then you might have white cabinets and all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 stainless steel things piled up at once. You start feeling off-centered. So things just don't balance out. So as much as we always talk about function and how that is important, but it's finding the right balance for what the function is, but for also what the space looks like. So just making sure that it's spread out evenly, but it always works for you.
Right. There's such a thing as the work triangle in a kitchen, which goes from your major appliances, your stove, your refrigerator, and your sink, because we're always moving, around that area. But if it's not balanced, then people are doing circles in their kitchen. They don't even realize how many steps they're taking just to make a simple cup of coffee or to cook, or even with your trash can. Like, where is that in conjunction to where you're prepping? So that's really important as far as functionality goes, and also the symmetry of what it looks like. So Ken, what are your thoughts on symmetry?
Absolutely. That symmetry goes very closely with balance, because it's all about that visual aesthetic. Does everything feel in harmony? So just kind of reflecting back on balance, just real quick, because it will tie into the symmetry. I think as designers, we have lots of tricks up our sleeve to help maintain a good balance in a room. And that can be, if you have a lot of those stainless steel appliances, we know that we can use a kitchen cabinetry panel on those to make them blend in more seamlessly, and then you're going to achieve a better balance with that. A kitchen table that is in a little breakfast area can be part of achieving balance, because on one side of the room you have all of the beautiful kitchen cabinetry and countertops and beautiful backsplash and decorative handles, all on one side of the room. And then on the other side, where you just have a breakfast table, that imbalance can be very noticeable, because all of the interest is on one side and then we have this separate function on the other. So we as designers, again, have little tricks to bring other kitchen elements into a breakfast area, or we're very aware of how to balance that room, because a lot of the time that's going to help us to achieve symmetry. And there's lots of different levels of symmetry, and examples that we've been talking about so far exist in like the totality of the room, so that when you walk in, does it just feel right on both sides? But then there's also symmetry that exists in more localized area. So we always like to achieve a beautiful symmetry around the range and or your cooktop, because very often that's going to be a focal point, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But having a beautiful symmetry around that range that showcases a hood, that you have mirroring upper cabinets that have that center line based around the range, really makes it feel very beautiful. Same thing can be considered around a sink area. So we're looking for opportunities to build symmetry, a particular type of balance, both within the room and then little moments that exist throughout the kitchen. So a really good designer is going to be thinking on multiple levels when it comes to symmetry.
Yes, and most people are more symmetrical than they think they are. They may have an idea of what they want, but a designer is going to know, like with cabinets, if you go under 24 inches, there's only going to be one door on that cabinet, not two. So if you have maybe a window and you have two flanking cabinets, one on either side, and one is bigger than 24 inches and one is less than 24 inches, you'll have one door on one side and two doors on the other side. And, you know, people don't think about those things, but after it's finished, you walk in and you're like, oh, that doesn't look symmetrical to me. You know, why does this one have two doors and this one only has one, and maybe they're only 3 inches different in the cabinet? So all of those little details are what a professional designer is looking at, so that you can create that symmetry. And also focal point, like Ken said, is so important, because as we know, you walk in, you need something just to give you that aha moment, that wow when you walk into the kitchen. So Melissa, how can we create outstanding focal points?
Well, I think it's important that, you know, focal points give us that aha moment, like you said, but you also don't want too many of them. And when I'm working with a client, you know, I always say to them, what do they want their wow factor to be? We don't want a wow backsplash, a wow countertop, a wow floor. You know, then I go in the space and I'm like, okay, where does my eye go? You know, there's so many things for me to look at. I'm not focusing on anything. So I always say, what do you want that wow factor to be? And it's different for a lot of people. So ways you can do that is, you know, you can have a really cool countertop that you walk in and you're like, wow, that's cool. That's a piece of artwork. Other times it is the design behind the stove, maybe, that gives you a pattern, gives you a pop of color, things like that. But when you walk in, your eye goes to that. What's very big right now is pattern on floors. You know, but you don't want a pattern on a floor, a busy countertop, and a focal point over your stove, because the space feels very busy and you don't know where to look. So think about, when you're doing it, where do you want that wow factor to be? And maybe it's not one, maybe it's two, but making sure, you know, that they work together, that your eyes aren't going crazy. You know, it could be the cabinets are a little bit more decorative and then more simple on a backsplash and countertop. So there's a lot of different places, but the biggest thing, best advice, as I can say, is don't have too many.
Yes, and it all depends also on the scale of the room, because depending on that, if you're not changing the sizing of the room, then you really have to look at not only functionality, but how big that focal point is. Is the symmetry going to work? Does it have balance? So Ken, tell us a little bit more about scale.
Yes, you have scale of a room both in its width and length type dimensions, but people also sometimes forget you have to consider the height of the room. There's certainly a trend to take cabinets all the way up to the ceiling, which really is fantastic, but if you have, for example, a 9-foot ceiling in that room, it's very difficult to achieve that in a balanced way, or you know, you have so much cabinetry going all the way to the top. You're really looking at multiple levels of cabinetry in order to do that. And so that takes extra planning and care to make sure that when you do something on such a large scale, that it's all going to be balanced within the room. Scale for dimensions of the room, an island, which is something that everybody, well, I should say most people are looking to incorporate into their kitchen. So your width and length of a room is going to provide certain parameters on how big of an island you can actually have. And more people are using it as a gathering space for when they're hosting friends, family, but of course your everyday meals. So we're often asked to say, well, we're a family of 4, help us to accommodate 4 people around this island. And we have some tricks and tips that will allow us to get 4 people on an island of a smaller size, but we need the right clearances around all of our base cabinetry in order to do that. So we're always very mindful of the right scale of an island, particularly when we have appliances in there. Islands are a great opportunity to include a drawer-based style microwave. We are continuing to put more sinks in islands, or at least a secondary sink that can be used for prep or a little bar type area. And then even cooktop appliances. So when we think about scale, again, the size of your appliances is going to come into play. If you're looking to put in a commercial size range, something that's beyond the standard 30 inches, that is the average range or cooktop size. The next size up is 36, and then you start to kind of get into those commercial size appliances. Well, you have to think, do you have the right room scale in order to have this where you're not overwhelmed by all appliances? So it's figuring out the right balance of, well, I'd love to have this really awesome commercial grade. It's going to be super cool. I can turn on all these burners and just start blazing things out. I can make pancakes and griddle bacon in the morning and do everything on this. But, you know, as fun as that may sound, not everyone's looking for that performance. And when you think, well, gee whiz, now my kitchen is just a lot of stainless steel appliances. So we think about the scale of the room and making sure that it's all going to be pleasing when it's all done.
And Ken, I think a lot of those things, what you said, is one reason why, you know, higher-end designers, they're things we think about. You know, we always have people save like things on Pinterest or house that they like. And then you start explaining to them, okay, your kitchen can't fit a large island like this or that large appliance. That, you know, how do you pull what's most important from them and give them everything they want, when a lot of times we all working within those 4 walls, you know, that we have.
Yeah, and the other thing is we could walk into a room, and because we are fresh and new into that room, we may come up with ideas that the homeowners never thought of. So if they tell us a little bit about how they cook, we're going to ask questions like, well, do you want a wall oven, or do you want a freestanding range where the oven is underneath? Or maybe can we do a cooktop and put an extra wall oven, maybe one on top of the other, or even one in an island. So there's just so many different ways to incorporate appliances. And, you know, we always say if we could do kitchens without refrigerators and bathrooms without toilets, it would be so much easier. Because sometimes we can get perfect symmetry with everything, but then we have that big refrigerator that's going to take up so much space. So, you know, working around all of that with people's personalities, with the way they function in the kitchen, having that balance, the focal point, all of these things come into play. And that's why it's so important to use all of this to bring style, flow, and functionality into your space. And working with a professional designer, you know, we're going to be thinking of all of that and bringing it together, not just how it's going to look as far as colors or materials, but actually the real detail of everything. And even with cabinets, you know, we've brought up about going up to the ceiling. If you have a small kitchen, going all the way up to the ceiling sometimes will feel like you're cramped, or that almost those cabinets are going to be falling on you. You know, it's just very enclosing. So again, making rooms look bigger by using maybe large tiles on the floor with the grout line that's further apart so that your eye goes to that. There's just so many tricks that, that we can incorporate to make that room look larger. Or a lot of people are doing away with their formal dining rooms that they never use and taking the wall down and making the whole kitchen larger so that they do have room for all of those ovens and the big industrial range and hood that they want, taking the kitchen and the dining room and combining it into one large space. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's so interesting because so many people, so many homeowners are actually recapturing that dining room area to make it a part of the kitchen. And in fact, it's 3 of my current kitchen projects are doing exactly that because that's the right kind of open floor plan that people are really looking for, and gives you that opportunity to make the larger island and incorporate wall ovens. But what's interesting with each of the 3 homeowners that I've been working with, we immediately go into discussions exactly about today's topic now of balance and of symmetry, because we have all of this extra new space to work with. How do we expand in a beautiful way that's also functional? And so those were my first couple of meetings with all of my clients, was say, how are we going to fit your goals and still walk into this kitchen and be like, wow, this is amazing. This was exactly everything that I wanted it to be.
And I think that's a new way of living and how we live in our homes now, where you're not having the formal, dining room or even the formal living room, and how you're making it more everyday, functional, casual of how it works for you, every day.
And everybody wants to be in the kitchen, right?
Yes.
So we want to make that a spectacular room where everybody just wants to hang out. So there's several different ways that you can achieve this. You could hire each person separately. You could hire a designer, you could hire a contractor, you could try and get them to coordinate their efforts, or you could hire a design build firm. So there's no finger pointing. Everyone's cooperating and getting all of these 4 basic points nailed down so that it's seamless. So today we talked about balance, symmetry, creating a focal point, and also scale, and how you can incorporate these into your project. If you have any questions, you would like to talk to one of our designers, please reach out, go to our Facebook page, ask a question. We love speaking to all of you. We do Zoom appointments now, so somebody doesn't even have to come into your house. We can do it right on Zoom. It's an amazing world we're living in, and more and more people are remodeling their kitchens, because that's where we're spending all our time these days. So thank you so much for joining us for another Remodeling Reimagined vlogcast, and we look forward to coming to you again with answering more of your remodeling questions.
Once again, thanks for tuning in, everyone. And if you're looking to start a remodeling project, you can learn more about our design process at CiprianiRemodelingSolutions.com, and you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.